Hey, Link here. Thanks for joining me for episode 89, where I speak with the legendary game producer David Mullich, where we talk about indie development in the early days versus today, how they got into the industry, words of wisdom from their experiences, their thoughts on the future of game development, trends they've enjoyed over the years, their life outside of gaming, as well as some lightning round questions. Before we get started, don't forget there are links in the episode description that you can follow to learn more about David as well as the podcast. Also, don't forget to like and share the episode, and without further ado, enjoy episode 89. Hi, welcome to the Red Tunic podcast, a podcast where I look to rediscover what makes gaming fun and enjoyable by having positive conversations with those related to the industry. My name is Link, and today I'm joined by David Mullich, who has contributed to such titles as I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, Heroes of Might and Magic 3, Vampire the Masquerade, as well as an unfathomable number of others since the time of punch cards and systems that are truly not able to run Doom. Hi, David. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. That's quite an introduction. Yeah, I did get my start doing punch cards way back when.
Yes, I am aware of. I did a little bit. I didn't. I typically don't do a whole lot of looking up of people because I don't like to go in with like preconceived notions of where the conversation could go. However, I did do a little bit of research on you, considering that you are. Um, I I think I don't think it's wrong to say one of the um, OGs, I guess, of making games or of being around everything. And I saw that you at one point in time started with COBOL, and as someone that currently writes in COBOL, I would like to congratulate you on getting away from COBOL.
It wasn't hard to get away from it. Go was a what I don't know if it's still used much. It was a business programming language, and I didn't haven't done much business programming in my career.
Uh, yes, yes, I saw that very quickly from the projects you worked on. I would have been very terrified if they were written and set up to go through in any form of COBOL, modern or otherwise. And you'd be shocked, disappointed, I guess, maybe. I'm disappointed at least that COBOL is used quite a bit. It keeps me employed, so I guess I shouldn't be too disappointed in it. But its existence still in 2024, um, it shocks me. In all honesty,
Well, if it works for some people, it works.
Y- yes, exactly. And like I said, it keeps me employed, so I'm happy that it works for some people, and I've found some of those people that are willing to give me money to make sure their systems keep doing things, or for whatever reason, new programs keep getting made. Now, David, before we get started, I'm wondering if you would mind telling me or anyone listening a little bit about yourself, like the kind of things that if if anyone was wondering who you were, the most important bits, I guess you would say that you would feel you would want to make sure they knew of you. You know?
Well, I think you gave a very good summary at the top of the show, but to flesh it out a little bit, I've been working game development since 1979. Originally started as a freelance indie game developer when I was in college, working for a game company called Edgeware Studios. And when I graduated, I joined them full time as a game designer programmer and eventually became their head of software development. So got, I've been in game industry now for a little over 40 years. And yeah, you touched upon a number of the games that I'm most known for, which is The Prisoner, DuckTales, The Quest for Gold, I've Been My Time with Scream, Heroes of Might Magic 3 and 4, and Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Uh, But these days, I'm mostly focused on game education. I'm currently a game design professor at the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, California, and I also teach a class on game history at Otis College of Art and Design.
So thank you so much for sharing that. And it's I find it amusing the term you used indie. You were making indie games, and I I find it amusing just because like the difference in um like the way it's used now, the way it's seen now. I'm wondering if you don't mind speaking to this, or if it really is that different. But would you mind speaking to like the difference of what indie meant 40 years ago versus to what it kind of meant or started meaning, I'd say in the 2010s ish era where we kind of had what we see as indie now kind of created itself. Do you mind speaking to that if you can? I don't know
Yeah,
how that's going to play out. Sorry.
no, that's quite all right. By indie, I meant when I started out, I was not a employee of a company. I was essentially freelance, and I did work with essentially one game publisher, Edgeware Services, uh, and I would make games. Really, I came up with my own idea for the game. I basically told them what type of game I wanted to do, and gave me a lot of freedom for it. And I'd make the game, give it to them, and they'd go sell it, and I'd get a royalty check. So that's what I mean by indie. Um, that I wasn't an employee, at least not until after I graduated college. So really, freelance probably is a more appropriate term uh, today. Today, indie developers are they are ones that are self-funded developers, um, and they may either publish the the games that they make themselves, or they may when the game is completed go to a publisher to publish the game. I think that the biggest difference between an indie and non-indie today is whether or not they're getting funding from a major publisher. Because and what's important about that is that the people that fund a project essentially own it. So it's when you're working on when you're working on a funded project, in a sense, it's not really your project. And if a another person or another company is funding the project, they have a great say over that project, what goes into it, and what's acceptable. So it's a little bit it's less of a individual or distinct creative expression than uh, than uh, uh, than it would be if you had complete freedom to do whatever you wanted.
So thank you to speaking to that. And I understand what you're saying that that it's more of like a freelance kind of thing, but it's also like you said, um, talking about current indie about how typically, they'll own what they're doing. Um, and self-funding and what have you. And I know that that line gets very blurred, um, can get easily very blurred just depending on the different definitions or the different things that are at play. Like an indie studio versus a micro studio versus a mini studio versus what have you, what have you, what have you. Um, but thank you for answering that because it sounds a lot like even back then, when as you said is what was freelance would still kind of line up with what indie would be today under some terms. And I think that's just really interesting that, you know, as much as the industry has changed in 40 odd years or what have you, that it still kind of has trappings of what it always was. Does that make sense? I hope
Well,
that makes sense what
yeah,
I'm saying.
yeah, and we've kind of come not completely, but partially full circle. It was probably between the 1990s and the early 2000s. where where essentially a game developer was at the was that worked at the will of a game publisher, and game publishers decided what games got made and what didn't. Uh, they decided what it is they thought they could sell, what people would want, and if someone presented a game to them, they they didn't think would sell. No, we're not interested, and there was really no way to go about making your own game until Valve came out with Steam, and Apple came out with the App Store for the iPhone. Those were two big innovations that gave power back to the game developer and allowed a lot of the indie spirit to come back to games.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. I also like I agree completely because before I can speak more to the PC side because I never had like an Apple device or a Mac device or what have you. So that one's I only vaguely understand that side of things. Like the rise of the iPhone, how suddenly there was all the games and such popping off. I personally never, like I said, I didn't own one, so I didn't get to see that world, unfortunately. But you know in terms of like Steam coming along when they started cutting deals for indies and such, that for me that was a wild thing because one, it made it easier for people like me to buy games that or indie smaller games. Because before that, you learned about them if you were lucky by what would have been considered word of mouth or viral or what have you back in the early 2000s or late 90s. But then like you would have had to find a way to pay and uh, I I even when security got a little better, I was always sketched out about sites that were like, we have our own payment processor for credit cards. You found us through PC Gamer. Do this form that you hope is actually secure. And even if it did have those little web secure security things on the bottom that said they met all the standards of the plugins or the what have you, I was always still scared of them. So, like, yes, sorry. What I'm saying is yes. Yes. Sorry, I'm rambling now. I'm losing myself.
No problem. So yeah, it's yeah. As I said, we've kind of come back to where indie development and creativity has, has come back to game development, which I think is has been really great thing to see over the past decade.
And I imagine with you, teaching for either of the courses, but I imagine it's really nice thing because most of the people that are going to be taking any kind of like game design or what have you, or history related classes related to gaming, which I'm not gonna lie is a wild thing to say out loud that there is game history courses in any kind of capacity, but I imagine it's really interesting to see the amount of people coming through now and like seeing what I imagine is their versions of games. Sorry, I'm screwing up how I'm trying to say this. I imagine it's interesting seeing like their views on games and seeing what they are asking about or looking into or are interested in, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So David, I am curious about this one because like I mentioned at the top that you you started making games when punch card systems were still around, or at least I'm assuming around that time they were still around. Um,
Yeah.
how can you speak to how you got into doing that? Because the world today of how people get into making games is vastly different than how it would have been then. So, I'm hoping you can maybe speak to that one a little.
Yeah. Well, I was a computer science student at Cal State Northridge. Uh, in the late 1970s. and I really hadn't planned to pursue a career in computers. I originally wanted to be either an artist, a writer, or a filmmaker. But I when I went to enroll in college, and I saw the line of people waiting to pre-register for the radio, television, film department had wrapped around the building. I thought, there's no way all these people are going to get jobs in the film industry. So I kind of chickened out on the idea of getting any, pursuing a career in the arts and entertainment. So I decided to try something more practical, and I took a whole bunch of courses, and I guess I took a introduction programming class because I was always interested in robots and computers, having been a science fiction fan all my life. And one day I was out as I was in the computer lab waiting to use the shared printer to print out my homework. I started typing out a Star Trek game, a Star Trek space battle, space tactical game. And as I was doing that, it suddenly occurred to me that the player in a game is sort of like the is protagonist in a story, and is even more than that. Through their own actions, they're essentially co-writing the story, what actually happens within the experience, and that got me so excited about the idea of interactive fiction that as soon as I printed out my homework, I went down to the administration building and changed my major from undecided to computer science. So then we fast forward about a year later. Yes, I am taking a COBOL course, uh, as common business oriented language. It was what was used in most businesses and by government. And yeah, we use punch cards uh, for doing everything. I had a big stack of whenever I had to write a program, I had this big stack of cards with a rubber band around them that I'd have to. I'd sit at a typing station to print out each one, and then I'd bring it over to the counter at the university computer so they could go run it and they get the results. But some of the things that I did with it, I, I, I tried to have fun with it because business is boring. Uh, at least so I thought at the time. Uh, I would do things like use in COBOL, have it randomly generate poetry or print out pictures of spaceships. And my COBOL professor noticed that I was using the university computer for doing this, and so he called me into his office and offered me a job. Turns out he and a couple of the other professors at Cal State Northridge owned one of the very first computer stores, retail computer stores. And he had a number of customers uh, who would buy computers from him, but they didn't have there wasn't software around for them to use. And he hired me to write a database program for one of his customers, the Red Baron Coffee Company. And so it was for a I think the computer then was a Jupiter WaveMate computer, and so he had me write it. He didn't hire me, but I got royalties for it. Uh, he asked me to write database software for some of his customers, and I also at around this time the Apple II came out, which was one of the trinity of home computers that came out in 1979, along with the TRS-80 and the Commodore PET, which were the first successful home computers available. And so I created a version of my database program, FileMaster, for the Apple II computer that they sold through the company's software catalog. So the Rainbow Computing was the name of the store, and in addition to selling Apple II computers uh, on premises, they also had a software catalog the mail order catalog of software they sent out, and so that people bought Apple computers that could go and buy software to actually have their computer do something. And so my FileMaster program was sold through the catalog, but then they also hired me on as a clerk in the store. And my actually my main job there as a clerk was occasionally I did a little bit of sales, but mostly it was to run the mail order side of the business, duplicating. Well, back then it was most of what we sold was on cassette tapes. Audio cassette tapes is what was the storage medium for the early home computers. So I would have a bank of cassette tapes where I take the master copies of the software, many of whom were written by customers of our store. They bring home their Apple computer, make their own software on it, whether it be games or productivity software or educational software, bring it to us to sell it. And so I duplicate it and sell it to our catalog. But also, some of the very first game publishers bought their computers at at Rainbow Computing, and one of those was a startup called Eduware Services, which you can tell from the name. They mostly sold educational software, but they also made games, and uh, their slogan was "Unique software for the unique mind." So they were interested in games that were that were kind of a little bit out there, a little bit creative, a little bit innovative and different. And the head of the company, Sherwin Steffen, asked me if I'd be interested in writing games for him. And of course, I gave an enthusiastic yes. And so, in addition to pursuing my college studies and working in the store, I would write computer games at night. Uh, so I made three of them. The first was called Space 2, which was a text role playing game that was actually an expansion module to Space One, which was a game inspired by Traveler. And so I wrote some additional scenarios for their game, and then I followed up with two simulations. One was called Windfall, which is an economic simulation inspired by the gasoline shortage that was going on at the time in the United States. And the player would run a oil company uh, that owned a series of gas stations. So the goal of the game is to earn as much money as possible by adjusting the prices, and based upon supply and demand, you have to find the right prices to sell so that you you high enough to make money, but not so high that customers go away to competing gas stations. And it was all based also on queuing theory that that as you come to the gas station and waiting to use the pump, there would be lines of cars that would eventually accrue, just like the gas lines that we saw in real life in the United States at the time, and that part of the factors that new cars come arriving uh, would have is not just on the price but also on the line length. So if the lines were too long, they might go to another gas station and maybe had slightly higher prices. So that was my second game I made, and the third one was called Network, which was inspired by a mass communications class I had taken, in which the players run a television program and you'd be as the programming director, you'd be presenting with a number of different shows, premises for shows with different statistics about them, and your goal was to go and program these on the right nights and in the right order against competing shows, and try to get the highest ratings possible. So those are the games that I worked on as an indie game developer. And then when I finally graduated, Edgeware hired me on full time as a game designer programmer. So that's how I got my start.
So, thank you for sharing. I think that's like the whole story, the whole the walkthrough, I guess, is really interesting, that you went from wanting to work in I'm gonna say media and television and creative arts or what have you, like however it would have been phrased. Um, and then you know the line being too much like the gas station, the line being too long. So you bounced out of there to find something that might have been a little more lucrative for you. And by lucrative in this sense, affordability to even have a job kind of thing. Um, and then you starting programming, and then you full circling back into making a creative arts to it, like in a sense back into like the creative arts where you went. I assume because at the time everything in terms of computer science or programming was going to be very business oriented, and then you know uh, stumbled, I guess, maybe into back
Of
into what
course,
you kind of originally looked at and making
yeah, stumbling is a good way to put it. I guess, yeah, because because at the time computers were, you thought about computers, you thought about big, massive refrigerator-sized units that actually series of them that would take up an entire room, and that you know you had to have massive air conditioning in it because they got so hot. And yeah, all used for either business or defense. So that's yeah, that's that's where I thought the money was, or rather where I could find success. But what I learned from that experience is that you can't escape your passion. I wanted to be in arts and entertainment. That's what my passion was all while growing up, and it eventually found me. I could not escape my destiny, I guess, because I got noticed by my professors. I was most noticed because I was a pretty good programmer, uh, so I stood out in that way, but also because of I couldn't help being creative and finding ways to express myself creativity, and that also got me noticed. So. Uh, yeah, despite my initial fears about being successful, I just I couldn't help but be creative, and fortunately, I was talented enough at the time that I got noticed and noticed enough that people wanted me to be involved with their own businesses.
So, thank you for that. And I like to ask as well, words of wisdom to share from the experience. And I think, by all means, feel free to add on to this. However, I liked what you said is that you can't escape like the creativity or what have you, right? Like if that's what you like doing, if your passion is going to be like doing some creative or what have you, that it's going to find a way into what you're doing, even if it's not in a way that you expect it to. Now, I that's my interpretation at the very least of what you said. However, by all means as well, if you have any other words of wisdom that you might share with anyone listening, based on your experiences, which I don't mean this in a negative way, might be don't
Well,
do COBOL. But if you have any words of wisdom, by all means, I'd love to hear it.
well, I mean, yeah, if you want to be happy in life, you have to be who you are. Hey, don't try to be somebody different. Uh, and the trick is finding a way to that you can that you can channel whatever your traits are in such a way that they can be used successfully. For those who are interested in getting into game development, I will point out that uh, although it sounds fun, and believe me, I understand that some people want to get in game development, just want to do it for the fun. For 5 years, I was worked. I was the lead faculty at the Los Angeles Film School's uh, game design and production department, and a lot of our students were military veterans whose education was paid for them by the U.S. government as a well-deserved thank you for their service. But a lot of people, a lot of my students at that school were they were gamers, and they thought game development, that sounds like fun. That's what how if the government's going to pay for my degree, I'm going to get a degree in game development. And I had to point out that that game development is hard work. It is a real job that requires real skills and real dedication. Um, and no one's just going to pay you to just play games, and they're not going to pay you just to come up with ideas for games. Uh, it's real easy to come up with ideas for games. One of the exercises I had for my students, I put them together in groups and say, come up with 100 game ideas in 1 hour, and nobody ever failed that assignment. Yeah, coming up with ideas is easy. It's actually turning those ideas into a playable, engaging game. That's what's difficult. That takes skills, that takes talent to it. And so, if you are interested uh, in in a career in game development, you have to develop those skills. You don't necessarily have to go to school to do it. There are plenty of books and YouTube videos and online resources for learning about game development. There's a lot of free engines available out there and free game development platforms available for learning. But yeah, you do have to learn and you do have to work at it. And if you want to be successful, you got to be very, very good because it is an extremely competitive field. Probably for every job opening that's out there in the game industry, you might have 100 different applicants for that position. So, and only one of them is going to get hired. So, in some way, you have to be you have to stand out from the rest, either because you're you have you've already done the type of work they're looking for. You've already made a type of game that the company that's hiring you wants to make. Uh, uh, Maybe something you've done on your own for fun, or maybe you've done as a mod, or designed a level for. Uh, so you have to stand out by having done that type of work before, or just being really a really good programmer, a really talented artist. Um, a really really good level designer, uh, and you have to be better than everyone else that's applying for that same position. Um, you have to have really good work habits. Two of the most important soft skills. We talk about skills in both terms of hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills are ones that require knowledge and training. So whether it's programming or artwork, those the ability to create digital art involves a lot of hard skills. Soft skills are more personality traits. Um, you have to be really good at being able to deliver on time uh, what was requested, and you have to have really good communication skills because almost all game development is done as part of a team. You have to be a good team player. You have to be able to communicate with your team members. If you can't work, there are very few jobs and not interact with other people. So you have to be a good communicator. Whether you work on site or work remotely, you have to be able to communicate well, uh, both written and spoken communication. Those are really important skills. And being able to stand up to pressure. Game development is is a very stressful job, usually because you're working under very tight deadlines. Um, if you're working on a game and the game's come far enough along that the company you're making it for, or if you're making for yourself, you're advertising it and you give a release date, 6 months ahead of time, a year ahead of time, whatever that is. You need to deliver on that release date. And problem is, games are really complex things to make, and working, when you begin working on the game, you don't know about all the problems you're going to encounter. You really, I mean, you may be working on a game for a couple months before you really start understanding the game that you're making. So that makes it really tough to predict all the problems foresee and how long things are going to take. And as you develop more and more details of the game as it progresses further along, more problems will start to present themselves. So you have to be really good at problem solving, and as a deadline is looming, or conversely, if the budget that's been allocated for your game is depleting, uh, and you start running into problems that delay you, boy, that can be really frustrating. You have to be able to deal with that frustration level, and kind of work your way through the pain and being able to actually deliver a completed project.
So thank you for all of that. And I I always appreciate hearing advice that overlaps on what others have said, just because it's always nice to hear that there's consistency there. Um so yes, thank you so much for sharing all of that. Um and also the giving the hard skills and then the soft skills, because it's an important thing that a lot of people don't take into consideration, or even fully understand the transitive nature of the soft skills that they have or that they can learn, or what have you. Because a lot of people, and just in general, I mean, not just for games, have a tendency to focus on just like, well, I'm a really good programmer, therefore all everything will work out, everything will be fine. But then they get into a workplace and they find out that uh might be a bit of an extreme, but like no one likes you, or no one, you don't get along with anyone just because of your personality or what have you. And you never learn the soft skills to be more personable, or what have you, right? So thank you for sharing both sides of that. And I know that wasn't one example you strictly gave, just but just like the idea of keeping all those things into consideration is what I mean. So thank you for that.
Yeah, well, actually, that's true. I have dealt with team members that had abrasive personalities, and it was unfortunate. It was my job as a manager to figure out if that person had talent, to figure out ways to utilize their talent and have them work with the team despite their abrasive personalities. But it's a lot easier for you to find work if you have if you're the type of person that other people want to work with, because you as big as the game industry is, it's also in many ways a small industry. A lot of people know each other, and a lot of the work uh, in the game industry has gotten through referrals and recommendations more so than applying for open positions advertised on the job page of a company website. I'd say 80% of my jobs have been gotten through people recommending me for the position, or people reaching out to me and asking me and tell me about the position and asking if I want to work for them. So it helps being having been someone that at least some other people had a good experience working with me and they want to work with me again. So be that person. Be the type of person that people want to work with you. That's that's probably the most important thing you can be. Someone that other people want to work with.
So yes, thank you for elaborating on that, because yes, abrasive personality was the what I was in the direction of. So thank you for elaborating and saying it more clearly than I was failing to do. Because yes, I think everyone has worked with that guy. Um, and like you said, having to figure out if they can be utilized, or if they'll be a fit. And then, like you said as well, that and as I've noticed this with talking to everyone, that the industry, like you said, it's really big but also really small in some of the weirdest ways possible. In that, like, you end up talking to someone who's like, oh yeah, I know, like, for example, one person um I spoke to another person, and they actually lived together. They were roommates for a while. And then another person I spoke to was like lived down the street from them, and they all used to hang out. Like, it's really and like all these people making vastly different games, they weren't working together. It was just different projects. But it's always funny to see, just how small the pond really is once you're in it, or once you're, standing at the edge of it. Because I'm not a game developer. I'm, just looking into the pond, but what have you. But yes, but also thank you for that, because that's also a very good point that you're gonna want to have people that are not going to say mean things about you when it comes time to trying to hire someone else, right?
Yeah, because when I'm hiring people, I'll check their references. Actually, what I try to do, I don't. I'm actually less interested in references that they say that they provide, because if you're smart, you're going to pick people that are going to say good things about you no matter what. I try to figure out if I know somebody that they might have worked with, and that's how I find out about them.
So, David, I am curious, and I'm not like, usually I ask if there were games that made you want to get into gaming. However, I don't think that question flies the same way for you. So, what I'm going to ask now is, for someone that's been in the industry for such a long time, um, and will avoid any, unintentional negative connotations or what have you to the question. Um, but I'm wondering if, in all your time, and now teaching and what have you, are there any games that you're seeing that and give you hope is the wrong word, but if there are there any games that you're seeing that kind of make you think, oh, the future is in good hands? I hope the what I'm trying to ask makes sense, because I know
Yeah.
it's probably really shaky.
Well, I mean, yeah, within the past 10 years or so, there certainly have been games out there that have really advanced, the state of the art. Um, the Last of Us, for example, in terms of narrative storytelling within it, really excellent work. Um, that would be one example. Open ha, open worlds that I guess Grand Theft Auto was the first to explore. Um, uh, has really made it exciting in terms of being able to give a player freedom to make their own decisions and within games. Journey is an adventure game that just the art style of it, uh, and the fact that so much of the game is in addition to art, is the players motivated through audio within the game. There've been great achievements over the past few years, um, that that give me hope. But even more than that, there are now so many tools out there that make it so easy to create games. That's what really excites me. Um, that there is no longer this boundary, this obstacle that people have to overcome if they want to get into game development. Obstacle of having uh, in-depth technical knowledge. I mean, because we have things like Roblox and Game Maker and a tool that I've been using for a while, for the past couple of years. Yahaha Studio and Unreal Engine for Fortnite. Um, quite a number of platforms that make it so easy to develop games that are professional level quality. Uh, uh, I think that's great. It allows a lot more people to get in and indulge in their creativity, even if they don't have the technical skills and knowledge. That gives me a lot of hope.
So, thank you for speaking to that. And, I haven't had a lot of experience with um certain aspects of what you were talking about. Fortnite, in this case, I'm meaning the Fortnite creator studio or what have you. But the the idea of that, I completely understand. Um, because I'm struggling right now to think of the one whole game thing that a lot of younger people play. Um, I feel really old saying that. But it has its own tools to like make worlds, and I've seen some of the things that people make in that, and seeing that Fortnite's doing a similar thing. Um, I understand completely what you're saying because like that's a wonderful thing that more people are going to be without the walls or the hard ceilings that would have been, years and years ago, being able to get into doing things and creating things for other people to enjoy. Because, as I'm sure you understand, as anyone that works in like a passion industry, um, that having people be able to enjoy the thing you're putting out means as a whole is like a really nice thing to know that like you're reaching people, that people are enjoying what you're doing. So like I understand what you're saying. I agree completely that it's really cool that that's kind of where we are with games now as well, that you know just the amount of people that can get into the water is fantastic.
Yeah, as I said before, it in a lot of ways it's like the days at the start of the game industry where you didn't you programming games wasn't really all that hard, um, and you could bring them to your local computer store to get them published, and really you could do any type of game you want. Now that the production values of games have increased, they're that thankfully now there are platforms that you can use that allow you to create those games with those high production values, and it's relatively easy in terms of actual implementation. Crafting an engaging game that's still hard, and standing out from the competition is still hard. But yeah, it's so easy to make games now within just a few hours, that are have a lot of complexity and depth to them. Um, I think that's great. It allows people to go and try new things and create the types of games that you're not going to find from a AAA publisher.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And speaking kind of on uh the same topic, same realm, I guess. I'm wondering if you've noticed uh like a trend or what have you that's been coming up from that side of things or what have you. And if you have one that you're like, oh, I really like where this is going. Now, I understand completely that this question, the answer could very well be the ease of access. And if that is, by all means, fair answer. But I'm wondering like if there is like a trend that you've noticed that people have been trying to see what sticks or experimenting with or what have you, that you've seen and you've enjoyed getting to see it, be played with.
Yeah, I mean, where some of the trends over recent years that I've seen that I really like um, are narrative-driven games. Like I mentioned, the Last of Us as being one of them, but Cyberpunk 2077, Red Dead Redemption 2, games that really have a complex story, have have complex characters to them. Uh, that's something I like to see. I also like to. I also like games. I've always for years and years ago. How many year was it? Like 1980, 81. I went on Sierra Online, which became known as eventually Sierra Software. Sponsored had a river raft trip, um, that they invited people in the game industry to, and I went on that. And as we were camping out one night, I had a brief discussion with Roberta Williams, who is known mostly for the King's Quest adventure game series, and she's the one who created the very first graphic adventure game, Mystery House. So she's a legend in the game industry. But she and I had the little short debate um, about whether games should have a storyline that is fixed versus having one that's randomly generated. And I was arguing in terms of randomly generated ones. And she was she was arguing for fixed storylines, which is the type of game she made. And in fact, she was much more popular, much more successful. Her games were much more popular than mine were at the time. Uh, but I've I wanted to get to the point where we could have engrossing game experiences and games that were replayably engaging through 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 procedural generation. And it's really only now within fairly recent time where we do have procedurally generated games and open world games like No Man's Sky or Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, where you have really good, robust, engaging games that are indeed procedurally generated, so that you have a new game. You have essentially an endless game experience as you go to play it. So it's both the narrative driven focus on a lot of games and being able to have procedurally generated open world games is something that two things that I've always been a proponent of, but I think it's those are trends that have really bloomed, flourished within the past couple of years. And of course, I like the indie game renaissance that have happened over the past few years. Where you can see all games that aren't just the cookie cutter sequels that we see coming out of the AAA industry. I like that. So those three things kind of bring me back to what I remember the late 1970s, early 1980s were like, where there was a lot of experimentation and attempts to create really uh, struggling to create develop the form of interactive fiction at the time. Uh, but there have also been some trends recently that are completely new stuff that I really like. I like the developments in virtual reality and augmented reality. I'm particularly I'm more I'm more intrigued by augmented reality games than virtual reality. Problem with virtual reality games is that you're wearing goggles and you can't see what's happening around you. So unless you're in a very safe environment, I'm worried about tripping over a table or into a chair or something while playing those. I like augmented reality. I like advancements in cloud computing that allow players to have uh, to have very realistic game playing experiences, visually realistic, even if they don't have the most advanced hardware. I remember this was a couple of years ago. I wasn't working on a game, but I was hired by a television company to work on a virtual world that took place in the realm of fashion, art, music, and classic film. Um, and we were making it for mobile phones, for smartphones, Android and iPhone. And the person running the company and who was in charge creative, she was creative director of the project, knew nothing about games and really knew nothing about technology. And she would, every once in a while she'd call me to her office and showed me some video that she had seen about the latest PlayStation game. It was a cutscene with pre-rendered graphics shown on the PlayStation, and she kept wanting to know why can't we have this in our mobile phone game, this level of graphics? And I kept trying to explain to her, we don't have the memory, we don't have the bandwidth, we don't have the processing power that these games do. And explained it to her, and I think I got her understanding. But then a couple weeks later, she called me in uh, and asked me the same question again. And then something came out. It was from a fashion developer. It was a demo, but it was an online game in which the graphics were created through cloud computing. I forgot which fashion developer it was, but I looked at it and the graphics were just gorgeous. They were just so realistic, and that's because that's offline a computer elsewhere out on the server was generating all these high level graphics um, that just got streamed into your browser, in real time as you're moving around, and it looked wonderful. And my boss said I didn't see that if I had shown it to her, she'd be asking why we couldn't do that. But it was if the company had wanted to have that level of graphics, they should have from the start. I had actually joined the project in part way into development because the original producer left the project and brought me in to replace them. Uh, they should have started with a cloud computing uh, uh, technology to start with. But but that really impressed me. I think cloud gaming is something that is a development that I really like. Because really, one of the things that got me into game development is I want to be immersed in other worlds. The ideal for me is like the holodeck in Star Trek, where I want to be able to go and immerse myself into an environment and feel like I'm really there and being able to do what I want while still experiencing a story and reaching a conclusion. That's my ideal in technologies like virtual reality and augmented reality. Cloud computing go a long way to help realizing that ideal. So yeah, I like I like some of the developments in the past few years that kind of get us back into the creative frontier that I experienced at the beginning of my career in the industry, as well as the advancements in technology that that allow us to have gaming experiences far beyond whatever could ever dream was possible 40 years ago.
So thank you to speaking to that for sharing all that because I understand what you're saying in a lot of ways. I personally I'm kind of on the same boat with like the augmented reality aspect of things. As much as I enjoy what I've tried of VR, the idea of augmented reality kind of stuff speaks to me a little more because, like you said, you are not as confined to what you hope is a safe space, and I say that as someone that has accidentally punched their friend in the back of the head with
Ah,
VR
yeah.
goggles on, right? So
Uh,
like
I had to tell one intriguing development that I've seen recently. It was developed by a Imagineer at the Walt Disney Company. Just got like 6 months or so ago got a patent on a floor that's kind of made of a series of little beads, and you could go and walk on a small section of the floor. Your body wouldn't actually be moving in real space, but you'd actually stay in position while you were walking. But the rotation of the little beads would measure that you were walking, so that way you could have a virtual reality experience where you felt like you were moving, your body felt like you were moving, but you actually wouldn't go anyplace. So there may be I mean, we're getting to the point where we could have that virtual reality experience, but in a safe space because you're not really going to be bumping into anything. You're not really moving.
yes, and that's I'm aware of things like that in terms of the floor. It's interesting that they made it where it's a bunch of little beads that effectively because some of them are kind of like treadmills, air quotes there.
Yeah,
But it's interesting that it's, not where it's just a bunch of little like roller balls that you kind of are stuck on. Um, So yeah, I imagine that is much safer and probably would hopefully prevent, more interactions like I've had where you accidentally punch your friend in the back of the head because you don't see them
Yeah,
as they're trying to get out of the way. Luckily, in my case, my friend understood, and didn't hold it too
that's
much
good.
against me, but at the same time, it was a very unfortunate interaction because you never wanna you don't I don't think anyone is like, "Oh, yeah, I punched my friend, it's a good time." Like, no, it wasn't, right? You feel guilty for it.
Well, actually, I've always preferred single player games. So, uh, virtual reality single player game where I'm not hitting my friend. That could be fun.
Well, in this case, it was a single player game. He was trying to hide on the get
Ah,
out of the way on the couch from me, and I was,
okay,
losing my
okay.
tracking. I was vastly getting out of the area of where I should have been, and yeah. Anyway, I do not. I would fear a virtual reality game around a bunch of other people because then you're just kind of taunting fate, right?
Yes.
Now, David, I do want to work towards letting you go. I don't want to keep you here for too much more time. However, if you're okay if I have a few quick more questions I'd like to ask. One of them is, what you do outside of gaming, like how you enjoy your life, like what you do to relax that isn't gaming related. And if it is gaming related, completely understandable. However, I still like to ask, because as everyone should be aware, you are not most people that make games are not entirely comprised of just making games, right?
No, I'm not. I used to work such long hours making games, 60 hours a week, 80 hours a week. Um, uh, I got out of the habit of playing games at home because my wife would get really upset if I were gone that long and then come home and just play games. So I've developed other interests. Actually, I've always had a lifelong love affair with movies. I absolutely adore movies. Yeah, I originally wanted to be a filmmaker. So I like, watch a lot of movies, watch YouTube videos about the making of movies and analysis of movies, uh, read about the making of movies. So yeah, movies are something that I'm very interested in. I like travel. I've fortunately I've through work I've gone to travel throughout much of the world, and these days I'm I get invited to a lot of conferences to speak, and so I've recently in the past couple of years I've traveled to Prague and Warsaw and Edinburgh. I was in Milan last July. Um, so yeah, I enjoy traveling quite a bit. Um, Also, something I spend an inordinate amount of time on is a question and answer site called Quora, where I go on and answer people's questions, mostly about game development. And boy, yeah, seems like every time I can steal away a few moments, I go onto the Quora website and look up questions that people are asking, and then answer them. Yeah, either about game development or pop culture. Uh, I spend a lot of my time doing so. I'm trying to share what I know, share my opinions. That's something I like to do.
So thank you so much for that. And I imagine anyone that uses Quora would also thank you for going on to answer sincerely or legitimately, because as I'm sure you've seen, some of the answers you've come across on Quora are crazy. I think it's the safest way to say it.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, Quora isn't what it used to be. It used to be a really nice website. It's past couple of years, it's unfortunately got infested with a lot of trolls. So the quality of the questions and the answers have gone down a little bit. But I don't know. I first got into Quora 10 years ago, and in the 10 years, I've written 40,000 answers.
Oh wow.
So that's an average of like 4,000 answers a year. So probably an average a little over 10 to 15 a day.
Yes. So I very much, I imagine anyone that uses Quora would be thankful to you, and your vigilance, I guess, for getting out there and giving us solid answers.
Yeah.
Now, David, as I said, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I do want to work towards getting you out the door so you can enjoy the rest of your Wednesday afternoon. Um, However, before we do that, I want to hit you up with something lighthearted, something nonsensical, and a little bit random with a quick lightning round of questions. Now, these are
Okay.
just a few quick, no judgment, random ones, so feel free to answer however you see fit. And again, um, by all means, don't think too hard on them because they fall apart very easily.
All right. Let's go at it.
What costumes and abilities do you think Kirby would inherit from you?
What costumes and abilities? My goodness. All right. So costumes. Probably the costume I'm most known for is my outfit as Sir Mullich. I was like I was a character in the Heroes of Might and Magic series, where I became one of the Might Heroes of Heroes of Might and Magic. So if that's one thing they would inherit, it's that. And in terms of it was a character that my team put together to me as kind of a joke while I was away on vacation. When it came back, they had inserted this character into the game, and his special ability was increasing your your army speed, and there was something about how my spasmodic gesticulation somehow get uh, to, the troops I'm trying to lead somehow gets them to. So if there's anything that Kirby would inherit, it would be my +2 speed as well as the ridiculous Renaissance fair costume I was wearing.
Thank you for that. Which game character is most likely to think of the Holy Roman Empire at least once a week?
Which game character is going to think of the Holy Roman Empire? Uh, boy, I immediately went to Age of Empires because I think one of them was set in Rome. I played a couple of Rome strategy games, but those aren't based around characters. So therefore, I would. How about Assassin's Creed? Uh, a character from that. That's what I'll go with.
That's very fair because a handful of them are surrounding the outfall, I guess you would say, of the Holy Roman Empire in terms of, Assassin's Creed 2 and the numerous ones there. So, yes, I 100% understand and could see it for at least one or two characters there. Which video game character do you think is most likely to hear this term yard sale and take it literally?
Yard sale here. Video game character that's going to say yard sale. Character that's going to want to. I don't know. Mario immediately popped in my head. I don't know why, but there it is.
Fair enough. So, David, thank
Oh,
you very
well,
much.
no, no, no. The game where you're riding a bicycle.
Paperboy?
Paperboy. That's it. Yeah, yeah. I'm just thinking about bicycling through the yard. So yard sale. Go buy the yard and turn it into a vegetable fence. Something you can ride through.
Yep, fair enough. Yes, I could see that better than Mario. Uh, but David, thank you so much for that. There's no more lightning round questions. I'll spare you any more of them. However, as I said before, I do want to get you towards the door so you're not here. So I'm not taking up any more of your time. However, if there was anything else you want to discuss, a cool game, something you're doing, something you just feel more people should be aware of, by all means, the floor is yours. As well, please let everyone know where they can find more information about you, which I'll also include in the episode description.
Wow. I already gave my words of wisdom, such as they were earlier on in the program. Um, if I had any parting advice, yeah, when keep playing games, and when you play games, be respectful of the other players. Uh, playing games is supposed to be a playful experience. Uh, Something that hopefully everyone can enjoy together. So, um, watch your behavior online. Uh, Try to make the game as fun for other players as you want it to be fun for yourself. Um, and also, be tolerant of the game developers. Making a good game is really hard work. Nobody goes out trying to make a bad game. And that everyone's struggling to figure out ways to make money making games. If you get down to it, if you factor in inflation, the price of games the price of games have remained essentially unchanged over the past couple of decades. So when you factor in inflation, games are actually getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, um, in terms of real spending money, which means that it's making it harder and harder and harder to make money at games. And game publishers are trying all sorts of ways to figure out ways to make money. They're trying different things, whether it's microtransactions and loot boxes and such. Sometimes they make mistakes and want to learn from them. You certainly should, if you're playing a game experience that you think is taking advantage of you, you don't like the monetization method, uh, or the game was released, it was too buggy, you certainly should not let the publisher or developer get away with that, but also temper that with a little bit of understanding that this is a real hard business to be in. And again, nobody wants to create an unfun experience for you. They want to make you happy, um, but that's hard to do. So a little bit of tolerance, a little bit of patience, and just be gracious in your communications with other people, because it's hard work making games, and uh, uh, we when you encounter toxic online behavior, that just makes it even more difficult uh, to work in this business. So try to be productive in all your your dealings with other players and with game developers. So that's my parting message. In terms of reaching me, I'm it's really easy to find me. I'm on Facebook and Twitter, or the platform that formerly known as Twitter. I'm on Instagram. Just my name, David Mullich. Type it in, you'll find me. I also have a website, davidmullich.com, where I used to blog regularly. I haven't blogged in the past couple of years or so. I may start that up again this summer. Um, now that I have some free time coming up. But um, yeah, I'm pretty easy to find online.
So thank you for that. Those I will definitely put, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and your website in the episode description, so anyone that's looking, they'll be able to find them easily. But also, thank you for what you said about effectively being kind to game developers. That's one of the things that uh, made me want to start doing this, was talking to game developers, and hopefully people would realize they're just real people as well, right? Like you said, no game dev goes out of their way to say, I'm going to make a bad game. Um, Let me rephrase that. Most game devs don't go out of their way to say, I want to make a bad game, just
No,
give me your
and,
money, right?
and then
Um,
yeah, and even I've made some games that turned out not to be what I hoped for. It was never intentional. In fact, some games I thought was going to be really great, and it turned out not to be that great at the end. Um, so yeah, it's just in general, just be kind to everyone, not just game developers, but other players, and be kind to the people you meet in normal everyday life. We're all in this together, and and we're all struggling, and life is hard. So be patient with other people.
So, David, I thank you for that. And I think that is a beautiful place to leave everything off. I'm not going to try and comment further on it because I think you said everything that needs to be said about that. So, if there wasn't anything else, I will let those be our parting words.
Let's do it.
Awesome. So, thanks again to David for making time to have this conversation with me. And thank you for joining us on the Red Tunic podcast, as well as a special thanks to Roland Jenkins for the use of music from the title track from Road Steep. And be sure to check out the episode description for links to socials, websites, and other means that will allow you to learn more about or support David and the podcast. While you're doing that, share, like, follow, and whatever else you think makes the algorithm work. Thanks. Until next time.